panel that I think this film requires almost. So please join us. We're having the panel actually right here in this room and not upstairs in the Speakeasy Cafe. So if you're staying for the panel, please stay seated. If you're out, please exit from the top so as not to interrupt and we can get the conversation started. And if you're leaving, please leave silently so we can actually start our conversation. Okay, I'm going to introduce our panel now. Folks, if you are staying for the panel, please take your seat. If you are not, please do not stand in the way. Sir, you're right here in the front as we're trying to introduce our panel. Thank you. Please welcome the directors of the film. I'm going to start with Oren Rudavsky and Joseph Dorman, both accomplished directors that we've featured here at the JCC before, and their films at the JCC before, and we're excited to have them back with this together, first of all, and to have them with this very profound project. I'm also going to introduce, to add, I think, another perspective to the film, Haaretz journalist on Arabs, Jackie Khoury. Please join us. And finally, also representing one of our partners on this festival, the Forward, and I think I'm often reading him in the Forward and finding that I think the person who really understands the situation and gets what Other Israel is about in many ways, J.J. Goldberg, editor-at-large of the Forward. Thank you, J.J., for being here, and I hand it over to you.
I have to start by saying that I promised my spouse several years ago that I wouldn't participate in panels that had no women on them. So pretend I'm not here. Or at least don't tell at home. I think when I first heard about this project, it must have been years ago, I was skeptical that it would be possible to get all of the nuances and dilemmas and contradictions and tragedies and both the tragedy and the glory of Zionism into one movie, and have it last long enough so that you could sit there between going to the bathroom. So, so I'm a little bit speechless when I see this, and this is the third time I've sat through it, and I still find it staggering. Having said that, it seems to me that it reduces, not that it reduces, the contradiction between Zionism, early on they said, aspired to normalize the Jewish people. I was always, very early on, we hear about Leon Pinsker and auto-emancipation. He was the first Zionist, I think, modern Zionist philosopher, and his theory was the Jews run into conflict with Gentiles for reasons that can be fixed. And that returning the Jews to their national homeland, Zionism, was meant to restore a normal state of relationship between the Jewish people and the rest of the world. And that was the essence of Zionism for Pinsker, for Herzl, for Ben-Gurion. It was about removing the irritants that created hatred and death and conflict between Jews and Gentiles. The other Zionism was the one that said Jews may return to their ancient glory, the eternal, the mystical, the metaphysical. And that conflict is with us more than ever before. And I think that's what the movie really gets at. Now, Oren, since you dragged me into this in the beginning, how much, is that the main theme in the movie, or are there more?
Well, I would just add another reason that it's post-Pinsker, which I don't think you just said, so I apologize if you just said this, but which is Herzl's, which is that the Jewish people need a state of their own, and that statehood won't necessarily normalize. I mean, his hope was certainly that it would normalize the Jewish people's life in the world and make them like other nations, but that having a state of their own is an essential part of that first. So I think that's a little different than what you said. And Joe, if you want to add to that, go ahead.
Well, I mean, I think if the question is why hasn't Zionism normalized the Jewish people, I guess the larger question, what can possibly normalize the Jewish people? Speaking as a Jew, two Jews, I assume mostly. Yeah, I mean, obviously, this is the great sadness so far. As much as you talk about the tragedies and the glories, and on the one level, as someone has said, that it's of all the 20th century movements, it's one of great ideological movements. It's perhaps the most successful. On the other hand, despite that, it's had serious shortcomings, and we all know that, and we live with that. And the fact that it has had those shortcomings is one of the reasons we continue to want to make films about Zionism in 2015. And I think it is one of the things that Oren and I grappled with from the beginning, and was in large part why we wanted to make the film. Once you ask the question, why has there been failures along the way in addition to the successes, the natural question we all ask ourselves is why. And for every person out there, there are different answers, and we wanted to try to present this in a context that would add more light than heat to that would allow scope for multiple narratives, both Arab and Jew, Palestinian and Israeli, in order to allow people to see the multiple narratives whole at the same time to the degree that we can in a film like this.
And I guess I just want to add that the dream, when it was the modern dream of the 1860s through the early 1900s, was a dream that was, as Yuli says at the end, was ignorant and willingly ignorant of what they. There were certainly Jews who, in those early years, knew that there was a Palestinian population and saw what was coming, but that ignorance was both what built the country, and unfortunately that ignorance, the real reason we wanted to make this film was to try to correct that ignorance, because we grew up in a Jewish world in the 60s and 70s and 80s where we were still in denial of the fact that there was a people that were being occupied.
Jackie, let me start by saying I'm kind of excited to be here because I've always wanted to meet you, and I'm a big fan of your writing. I watched this movie from two different eyes. One was, if it's a story about Zionism, then it's tremendously balanced in terms of its presentation of both the various Jewish points of view and the Palestinian claim and the internal contradictions within it. But if it's a film about the conflict, then in a sense it really shortchanges.
Okay, first of all, I'm happy to be here, and it's for me it's the third or fourth language speaking English, and I have, for me to, as Arab citizens, Palestinians, citizens of Israel, to write in Haaretz, for me must learn very good Hebrew. So English, just this film was just difficult for me, and I say that I see more the Palestinians in the West Bank and in Gaza Strip, but I'm waiting for Palestinians as Arab citizens in Israel. I didn't see I think we see Samih al-Qasim, and I just see, and I ask myself, where's me, my society, and most of people think that there's the Palestinians in the West Bank, in Gaza, in the refugee camps. And what happened for 1.5 million citizens of Israel that are Palestinians? My grandfather born in Palestine, and also my dad, and I'm born in Israel, a citizen of Israel, but I speak Arabic. I have a relationship with many friends. There's most of the Palestinians in Israel have also relationship and cousins in Ramallah, in Jenin, and everywhere. But when we looking what happened, I just ask where's the 530 villages that disappeared in 48, and it's very difficult story. And it's, for me, it's you, and for you, I think you must know that the most popular event now for the Arabs in Israel, it's not what happened in 70 and 87 and in October 2000, but it's the event for the Nakba. You know, the Independence Day, the Israelis go out and do the for barbecue, and more and more Palestinian inside Israel citizens goes to their villages. That mean that they, because what happened now with them, the government and the right government in 10 years, you see more youth go to their villages and ask, okay, what going with us? What we going to do now? You're talking about independent state in West Bank and Gaza. I don't know if it will be in this decade, but also us, we want to be equal, and we ask the Zionism, what are you doing for us? And we don't have any question, answer for this question. Even the movie didn't give. I'm sorry to tell you that.
No, it's okay.
We know you're talking about Land Day, right?
No.
Oh, not Land Day.
No, not Land Day. It's something else.
Oh, I'm
It's
sorry.
76.
Okay,
And,
sorry.
the Independence Day in 48. Now the most popular event, if you go to what happened in the Arab society, in the Land Day, it's very important. What happened in October 2000 is very important. But more and more youth go to when Independence Day in Israel, they don't celebrate. They go to the Nakba.
Does that happen on the 15th of May or on the 5th of ER?
No, it's the Independence Day because we have a vacation.
I'll disagree minorly on the small stuff and not on the major stuff. Of the people in the film, of the Palestinians in the film, Saeed Zidani actually lives in Ramallah, but is an Israeli citizen born there. And the man whose name I forget briefly is also an Israeli Palestinian. But having said that, I think I take your point. I don't think we have a major disagreement about the fact that there wasn't enough room to incorporate that as well. There were many narratives to tell. We do try to incorporate it in the post-48 period a bit, and obviously in other portions of the film. But there's no question that that this is a film primarily about the Jewish question with Palestinian commentary. It's not a fully, it's not equally balanced between both sides. And Oren and I think when we did this, we're very sensitive to these issues. We tried to incorporate more. It was a lot of history. That's a poor defense, I know. But so I take your point. I take your point.
One of the questions that I was looking for, maybe because it's so much in the news in the last few months, last couple of years, since the project started, the question of whether Palestinians, including more and more Israeli Palestinian citizens, accept the right of the Jewish people to a state, is recognition by the Palestinians of Israel conceding that there's nothing to do about it, or is it accepting the right of the Jews to a state? Or is that a debate that's going on within the Palestinian and Arab
I think
community?
that it's two parts. First, the Israelis or Palestinian citizens of Israel, I think that since 48, they accept it. We want to be Israeli citizens, but we asking more and more for to be equal. There's one problem. The United States is the citizenship state. In Israel, you can't talk about citizenship and to ignore my narrative totally. It's very difficult for us. So we are asking, and in democratic issues, we don't have and we don't need. And I think if you ask all the Knesset members and all the parties for the Arab Israeli, they don't believe that they can make something with violence. It's very clear for them. But we need to be equal and to recognize our narrative, our nationality. And the Palestinians, the West Bank and Gaza, they're talking about state in West Bank and Gaza. You know, if you ask Palestinians, my Palestine, the historic Palestine is all Israel, okay, from the sea to the river. But they are talking now about state in 20% what the historic Palestinian, and they ask us themselves every day, okay, we go for we need agreement, we have to why negotiate Israel, but now if you see every day new settlements, even the 20% are disappearing because of that. You heard every day now. I met Abu Mazen before 1 month, and when we it's not for off record. He said to me, maybe in 10 years we will be like you, like Palestinians, but we are citizens maybe in the state of Israel, because what we see every day, it's very difficult to us to talk in 5 years for two states for two people.
Oren, let me ask you a question. When you first started conceiving of this project, how did the vision of the film evolve from sitting in the city diner on 90th Street to seeing this here?
Well, I'd say that it evolved very much with Joe when we went on our trips to Israel, when we met, and Palestine, when we started meeting people. And that this was a voyage, and as you know, I think when we met on 90th Street, it wasn't even clear that we were definitively just going to interview people from Israel and Palestine, or maybe it was, but because that was sort of a first idea. But what really happened was meeting Israelis and Palestinians, and one leading to another. And I think for both Joe and I, even in the face of the truly impossible, horrific situation for Palestinians today in the West Bank and Gaza, and the difficult situation for the Israeli Jews as well. But what we found was the vibrancy of voices on both sides were just remarkable. It's such a privilege to go there and meet such incredible people. But
Well, let me ask both of you this. I guess you first, and then you. Did the project evolve at some point from an explanation of Zionism and what it is and why it's good and fair into a project that explains why it's good and why it's a tragic failure? Mm-hmm. Did that second part enter it, or was it always there?
That happened between when I was about 16 and now. No, seriously, I mean, because in 1973, I was in Israel, in Haifa, and watching, the planes bring in wounded soldiers down to the port, and, doing volunteer work and hearing, and there was a news blackout because the news was so bad. So my sympathies were very clear. Since then, it's evolved slowly to where I still believe in the state and the rationale for the state, but the problem now is a very different one than I perceived it then.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with Oren. I think we knew from the beginning that we both believed in a state of Israel. We both believed in Zionism, but we understood flaws, we understood problems, we understood different stories, different narratives. I think this is true for Oren and I, that what happens when you start interviewing people, and particularly Palestinians, actually, what you find is, and Israelis, Israeli Jews, as well as Israeli Palestinians, etc., is that the narratives keep accreting. You keep getting more narratives. You keep getting different narratives. The spectrum keeps deepening and shifting. You get different facets. So I think that we already went into it with a very strong sense of things in that way, but then the more you meet people and interview people, everything just gets refracted constantly in different ways, and you just gain greater and greater respect for just the sheer number of refractions that the story goes through. So that's the way I would describe our journey.
And there are multiple Zionisms which are on the cutting room floor, and multiple Palestinian perspectives as well. So, you know.
Want to go to the audience? Who's got a question? There you go.
Hi, JJ. How are you?
David.
First, I need to reiterate what JJ opened with.
Hello, hello.
It's only on for him.
Okay, how's that? Better?
Yeah, better.
This is a remarkable accomplishment. You really managed to gather a tremendous number of perspectives, and so the image of collision is just perfect. And I just want to congratulate both of you. Nevertheless, as a student of American Jewish life, I found something missing. People will inevitably say that. Perhaps this will be the sequel. I wonder where in this and in your thinking was Zionism in America. As you all know, Zionism was always a diaspora phenomenon and continues in the American Jewish scene to be a very active element, having now generated a fairly forceful and growing anti-Zionist voice as well. So I was wondering, where is Noam Chomsky? Where is Judith Butler? Where is that growing divide in our own community, and to what degree was that part of the background for you in making the film?
You know, I think as Oren alluded to, because it's such a vast history, small country, big history, many points of view, that one of the earliest decisions we made, as much as earlier iterations of this, we had wanted to include the American scene. And there was a point where we realized that we couldn't, because we couldn't do justice to that and even begin to do justice to what was going on in Israel-Palestine. So that was a very early decision. And of course, it's ironic, right? The reason that we're interested in this is because we're part of the American Jewish Zionist scene. And we also hope that this film will play a role in that. I mean, one of the things we want for this film is for it to go out to young people. I mean, particularly we're interested in getting young people who may not know this history as well as older people. But we want it to go out to everyone. So we want this to play a role in the American Jewish scene. So that's where we are. But nonetheless, it was a painful but yet easy decision for us.
Let me say first that kol hakavod to both of you. This was a tour de force, and I think it's going to be an historic document. I really do. To react to JJ's question, is this about the conflict or is this about the internal struggles within Israel over Zionism? I think the importance of the film is dafka that it does not concentrate on the conflict, that it does concentrate on the internal dynamics within Israel, which from my point of view is more the story today than the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, about which so much has been written and so much has been said. I think this aspect of the story has really been neglected, and I hope many, many people see it. To me, the most poignant and powerful moment of the whole film was the very last frame when Hillel Halkin reflects on the possibility that the Zionist dream will have failed. And I think there are many of us who are lifelong Ohavei Tzion who are beginning to entertain that very question. Has the Zionist dream failed? And I think to end the film on that note should be a cause for deep reflection. I think it brings together everything else that you had in the film, and I think it was really a brilliant touch. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Let me do something a little outre here. Jackie, what's your response to what he just said? You're living in the middle of it. You're
Yes.
the only one here who's living in the middle of it.
I also trying to think like you guys. And you see this film and you talk about Zionism, how it give you a solution about, okay, we have a state of Israel, and we ask themselves, okay, if the Zionism give us an answer, okay, they don't give an answer for the Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza, and they don't give an answer for us. And I think when I see Mr. Rabin, the most, I think one of the He said, I think before 5 or 6 days before the suicide, he said, we didn't come for an empty country, an empty land. And if you're going down to the and ask Palestinians, they one of the question, okay, we have 2.5 million now in the West Bank and Gaza. What are you going to do with us? And the Palestinian today, he said, okay, maybe you give me a citizenship to be like the Arab Israeli, and I go to vote, and or maybe transfer me to Jordan, and also give me a state. But we can't, that's the state of Israel, the government, Zionism, ask what is this for. We need a problem. We need our narrative, and we need our state, or need a solution for us. And until now, nobody give them the real solution. They negotiate for 20 years, okay? They don't need another negotiation. We need something to be, that's it, that enough. Give me a chance to something, citizenship or state for me.
I think there's been some certain important steps taken. For example, they outlawed the word Nakba, didn't they?
Okay, but
I'm joking.
I would just say, I just want to say that thank you for your comment, because I think everything you said was what we were trying to achieve with the film. And I see Carol sitting right next to you, and I just want to, just before I forget, thank her for her incredibly generous support of the film, along with other, and that it was brought here. And I think I'm very pleased that it was brought here, because I think until Jews hear the Palestinian narrative and take it in and accept it, and until until Palestinians also hear the Jewish narrative and take it in and accept it, and until those forces, which we describe as two forces in Israel, but they're more than that, who see the narrative differently, until we can really appreciate each other's narratives, there's no chance for any future.
But if I can say just one, I see what I think Mr. Haaretz said, that we are here because of the Bible, and we see Mr. Hania what said that we will not recognize Israel. And this is the problem. If you go for a religion conflict, we will not find any solution, because of that, the leadership of PLO, especially Abu Mazen now, also talking about political issue, not religion issue. Because if we go to the religion issues, I don't think we can find something, to be based for the two states. But if it's a political issue, okay, we go to the negotiation, and we have your borders and our borders. The problem is that Mr. Netanyahu, in this 10 years, he don't say it. Even when we ask what is the east border for Israel, I don't know if you have an answer.
I don't think we have any answers. We have no, not one. No. Can I ask a quick question? Oh, sorry. No, yeah.
Go ahead, Carol.
The one thing, this is really not a question, this is a comment for Jackie. This is a Zionist movie, and this is the story of the clashes within the Zionist movie, and within it, it sows the seeds of what happened. Zionism came to a country that was not empty. People were there. They were aware of the fact that people were there. Ben Gurion said, we got to get rid of these guys. We can't live with them. And that's Zionism's story. A Palestinian story would be how little Muhammad woke up one morning, and instead of living in a country where he was free to go about, he lived under military rule, and he became a minority in a place where his ancestors lived for hundreds of years. That's the Palestinian story, and it's a different story from this one.
No, for me it's more difficult, because I'm a Christian, and even in
Even worse.
And they ask me, okay, if you don't be okay, you have ISIS, you have, it's very interesting in the...
Anybody else? Yes.
This is a wonderful show, and I actually came here because I had gone to college with Joe Dorman in the 60s, and I thought You were him, but you're not.
I'm far too young for that.
I know. I sense that. But I enjoyed and I'm one of these West Side New York Times readers, and I
Dysentery.
the forward too. I remember a map in the New York Times, fairly recently of the settlements on the West Bank, and it just looks to me that it's impossible to have a two-state solution, and you didn't seem to really address that. Just the practical political impossibility of evicting 300 people from those settlements.
Well, they've been saying it's impossible for 20 years, and it may, in fact, truly be impossible, but I don't think it's impossible because of the numbers of people. I think it's impossible because, as I said, neither side recognizes each other's narrative. There's no conversation, and there's no possibility of a common political will in Israel today, and the Palestinians aren't necessarily helping the situation. So I don't think it's a matter of numbers, personally.
Can I jump in here for a second?
No.
The maps that have been exchanged between the Palestinians and the Israelis over the last, there have been 3 rounds of negotiations going back to '95, would require between 80 and 120,000 settlers to be removed. Now, they removed 8,000 from Gaza. They moved 50,000 when they built the Cross Bronx Expressway. Mostly Jews, by the way. They destroyed the Jewish community of the Bronx in order to build a parking lot. So it's not that it's impossible. There are continuing disagreements over specific border areas, especially if you know the city of Ariel. It's right smack in the middle. It's not near the border. Almost all of the what they call the settlement blocks, the urban sectors that Israel expects to keep and the Palestinians have more or less conceded, are right on the border. So you just redraw the border. And then you compensate the Palestinians with extra land either next to Gaza or south of Hebron. But Ariel sticks right in the middle. No Israeli has ever conceived of evacuating a city of 30,000, and no Palestinian has ever conceded that it can stay there. So that's a serious problem. Other than that, it comes down to narrative. Israel wants to be recognized as a Jewish state, which is tantamount to asking the Palestinians to apologize for having opposed it all those years. You can't really do that. The Palestinians want to recognize the right of, not that 5 million Palestinians will come back, but that in theory they have the right, that they shouldn't have been expelled, which is asking Israel to apologize. So it's stuck on these 2 narrative issues where each side wants the other side to admit that it was wrong. And that sort of empowers extremists on both sides to say, look, they're being impossible. And actually, it's not impossible. As Ehud Olmert said, as Abu Mazen said in 2008, they were this far. They were a few. Every time they have gotten near an agreement, Yossi Beilin and Abu Mazen in '95, Arafat and Barak in 2000 and 2001, because the talks continued, and again, Olmert and Abu Mazen in 2008, they got this close, and the Israeli government fell. One was assassinated, one lost his coalition, and one was indicted. So until Israel can decide to leave its prime minister in the job and finish the negotiations, we won't know whether it's possible.
I think this conversation can continue possibly, but unfortunately we are out of time at the moment. The most important thing I need to say is that this film opens in theaters on January 29th at Lincoln Plaza, so all Upper West Siders who read the New York Times can go see it there, and all of their friends as well. So please help spread the word about that. I want to thank the panel. I want to thank J.J. Goldberg for being here.
Thank
the
you,
directors
Isaac.
for bringing us this film.